Okay, great. So now, guys, I think I'm going to move towards the admin side. So a couple things we saw in the demo, the end user view is end users are able to log in with their AD credentials. So we should probably set up an AD or some sort of LDAP. Two, we were able to do single sign-on with applications. And then three, we were able to engage in security policies such as MFA or even denying access to specific applications. So just to start, this is the admin view. You can notice, our UX team has spent a lot of time and effort. So even though that we are a security solution, we did not sacrifice UX for our admins. And it's really from this UX that we can start with our first task, which is integrating Active Directory. You can already see I have an AD integrated, but let's just imagine we're starting from scratch and we have to add our AD today. The way we do that is through a lightweight domain agent. So we would just install an Okta agent onto one domain join server. And when I say domain join server, I just mean, one server that is joined to your domain. It doesn't have to be every DC, and a big thing with Okta is we make outbound calls. And the reason why we make outbound calls is so you do not have to reconfigure your firewall. So just put it on a domain join server, install that agent, and let it talk to your domain and populate Okta with your users and your security groups. And, there's always some prerequisites here. The only prereqs really is just make sure you have a Windows Server 2008 and later. And, you can log in as an admin. And I actually want you guys to imagine that you guys are actually, not admin, a user that's actually tied to the domain. Right? Typically, mostly an admin user in some cases, but it just has to be a domain user. Now, that being said, I want you guys to actually imagine you're on your Windows server right now. You're opening up Internet Explorer. You're opening up Internet Explorer, and then you simply navigate, to this page. You click Download Agent. And then you follow a 5-minute step which just asks you to put in your Okta customer domain, username, and password. Now, once you do that, you'll actually have AD integrated into your environment. Right? You'll be able to drill down on your AD, see all the different users populated, right? As well as configure settings on when you want to import, how much you want to import. For example, do you want to import, everything by default, or do you just want to bring over certain security groups? And, the bigger picture here is, the bigger picture here, right, is that even though that, we're importing AD, all our users are eventually going to live in this universal directory, which is Okta's native store. So it's really clear that all your end users can live and have this one source of identity. So one source of identity for accessing all your resources, whether they're on-prem applications, cloud applications, or even applications you've developed yourself. And one thing that's critical here is that you can have users that live in Okta. That means you've created them and they don't live in AD. You can have users from, multiple Active Directories or LDAP. Or you can even have users directly imported from applications yourself. So, for example, I have a lot of users who came straight from Workday instead of Active Directory. But me, myself, I'm actually a user that lives in AD. You can tell this by my profile is actually mastered by Active Directory. And one thing that's critical here is I want you to look at my username here, andrew.vanbeek@vanbeek.testdomain.com. Now, that is definitely not my G Suite domain. But what Okta actually does on the back end is that it parses this format and it says, okay, I'm going to take the first name and the last name of this user, and I'm going to automatically format it into the correct convention. So not only is Okta automatically creating this account in G Suite for me, but it's automatically formatting my username to the proper email, in my applications such as G Suite, Salesforce, Workday, and what have you. Now, where things get really interesting with UV and Okta is the way we can actually leverage, our group rules engine too. So and I won't touch too much upon this because we don't have time, but there's a lot of automation capabilities here. So for example, if you wanted to say a user was in a certain department, such as like sales, then you could assign them to certain applications like 365 or Salesforce. Additionally, you can use your security groups here as well, right? Such as domain. As you can see, all my security groups from AD populate here as well. And I have a lot of business logic in here that helps me automate a lot of these processes for assigning applications. But speaking of applications, let's really go into how easy it is to set one up. So all I would simply have to do is click Add Application, search the application I want to actually add here. And, just to take a step back, we have a number of 5,485 applications. And why this number is important is that, single sign-on, automated lifecycle management type projects, they used to be like projects that take anywhere between, 4 to 8 weeks where you hire consultants, implementation solutions architects, project managers, just to do a live deployment. But really, with Okta and SSO, it can, instead of it being, a 4-week process, it could be a 4-step wizard. Similar to AD, it's just going to take a couple of minutes. Really to go into that, I could try adding Salesforce here. If I could spell, that is. Click Add. And then I would choose the application label, some general stuff. So if I wanted the title to be SF or, public demo, I just click Next here because the title is really all we care about. And then here, this page alone is the only page I have to worry about making single sign-on work. I click SAML 2.0 because it's a very secure standard. Secure web authentication is just equivalent to password vaulting and username injection, which we support by default on all of our apps. But if there's SAML 2.0, that means I can invoke federation. So I click View Setup Instructions. And the nice part of Okta is there's no Googling, there's no consultants. They tell you exactly where to click in your application. But more importantly, they tell you exactly what to copy and paste. So it's a copy and paste environment. You navigate to this page in Salesforce, and then you copy and paste these values. So this dynamic instructions is a big part of our IP, because one thing I want you to notice is that it says Van Beek Tech in this URL. So these are values unique to my own tenant. So a big part of our IP is dynamic, specific instructions for all of your applications in that 5,000 network. If it's in that network, you're always going to be able to follow instructions, and you won't need to have to Google or hire a consultant, even if you have little to no SAML experience. Now, I'm going to choose Secure Web Authentication because they can probably tell when I'm faking it here. And I'm actually going to move to Lifecycle Management. So really what Lifecycle Management is allowing Okta to do things on your behalf, things you don't want to do, such as creating a user in Salesforce or automatically deactivating a user in Salesforce when they leave the organization. And really all we ask of you is to put your username, your admin username, your password, and your security token, which is just a random string like so, that you could just populate in there from Salesforce. And once you do that, you can really just check what you want to happen. Yes, Okta, you can create users in Salesforce if they do not automatically have a Salesforce license. So what's critical is that Okta is smart enough to say, hey, this user already has a license in Salesforce. I'm not going to create them 2 licenses. So they don't use up your licenses in any regard. We're smart enough to auto-detect when a user in a license already exists. Hey, Okta, yes, if my Okta is connected to AD, and someone gets married, and I change AD, that change is going to get picked up by Okta, and Okta is going to say, okay, instead of being Lily Chan, she's now Lily Huang. That's going to be picked up, and it's going to push to Salesforce automatically. Now, we also have deactivate users. So when someone leaves your organization, all their sessions in Salesforce is going to be terminated, and their account's going to be suspended for compliance reasons. So this is automated provisioning, and the idea is that you never have to provision someone in an application ever again or deactivate a user. Now we click next, and really we're pretty much done here. We have our application ready to use. We would just assign a group, whether it's our security groups, or whether it's everyone in Okta. Right, so you can use AD groups, you can just use Okta groups here. And then essentially what you can do here is actually, the last piece. And let me just check if those users were, I think I got to assign it again. Click done here, and as you can see, everyone's assigned. Now, if we wanted to engage in a security policy, all we would have to do is go to sign on, add rule, and by the way, you can do this globally. So you can do this on the app level, or you could say protect the whole Okta dashboard in general, so that first login. But typically what it looks like is you just write a rule on top of that application, and then you ask yourself a couple questions. Who does this apply to? Does this apply to specific, AD groups? Okta groups, right? And this is a theme, right? Each time you do a security policy or an application, you can decide a lot of different, you can always decide, do I use the AD groups or, the Okta groups? Then you decide the where, for example, is this geolocation such as China? And these are actually networks and groups I've defined. For example, someone might say, oh, we only do specific countries. But if you actually look here, Russia close territory is a geolocation that I actually defined. And you don't have to do it just on geolocation. You can do it on blocked IP zones, on network, right? So the concept here is if they're not on network, they can't access the app. And then also the platform. So you can limit which platform they actually access this application. And then when all that happens, we decide what happens. So in this case, it could be like a multi-factor on every single sign-on, right? So that MFA rule you saw with Salesforce, or you could even decide, hey, I'm going to deny all access from the application if all these settings are met. And you click Save, and now you have this security rule applied.